Hey everyone, it's Andre Luck here to share my video here for this week where I'm going to talk about managing introverts on a sports sales team. So I'll speak a lot from my own experience. There's no actual research on this, but from my time being an introvert and what I preferred and where I could have been challenged more as an introvert on a sales team, but then also from introverts that I managed and things like that. So this could be whether you're an introvert manager, extrovert, ambivert as a manager, just some of the takeaways I had and how to best get the most out of those type of sellers on your team. So the first thing I'd say is there's a good chance that if you have introverts on your team, they're probably being misunderstood. Um, Even this morning, just interaction with my wife where I came downstairs, I just kind of had, I was really deep in thought and like just didn't have like a welcoming face. She's like, "What's wrong with you?" I was like, "Nothing." And she's like, "Yeah, there's something wrong with you. You just have this look on your face." I'm like, I was thinking, but a lot of times because, maybe we're not the most bubbly or outgoing, a lot of times we get misunderstood for disengaged, upset, frustrated. So that's something I have to work on personally. But I think that plays in the workforce too. And if you're managing these people, that could be something that could be a misconception and some misunderstandings that you have with them. But a couple things just high level on how we operate as introverts, particularly to sales. We like to work at our own pace, so it's going to be methodical. It's going to be structured. That can be a lot of high highs, low lows, but I mean, pretty much boring work. Like the story of the tortoise and the hare. Like we're going to be the tortoise, like slowly trudging along and eventually get to where we need to get to. We're going to think a lot before we speak. So and especially in sales, where sometimes you're going to be put on your feet and reactive, like that could be intimidating for us because we want to have all the answers. We want to map out everything. So be patient with us as we're thinking through. All right, when I hear this objection, here's this rebuttal, but yeah, you definitely push us out of our comfort zone a little bit to just go with it and just be okay and trust in yourself and trust the process. We fall victim to comparison syndrome a lot because whether it's lack of confidence or not fully understanding like your personality type and where your strengths lie, or just the fact that you're in an environment where you're around so many people that are probably different than you, that are like outgoing and loud and energetic, that you think that maybe you don't fit in unless you're very confident in yourself and someone's really drilled that in you, like, hey, here's your strength, here's where you're going to differ. It could be very difficult to be like, well, I don't sound like Susan over there, I don't sound like Tommy, who's like very outgoing and like crushing sales. So we definitely compare ourselves a lot and sometimes belittle our accomplishments because it doesn't look like and sound like everybody else. And then a lot of times we let our work do the talking for us. Like we aren't gonna, be the most boisterous and bragging and braggadocious and talking about all the sales that we've closed or what we have in our pipeline. I remember, early in my career, my boss would be like, "Yeah, every year I'm worried because like you don't really say much, and I'm wondering like, right, is Andre all right? Like, is he doing his thing?" But at the end of the year, you'd always be near the top of the board and get to your goal. I'm like, yeah, because I just sat at my desk and worked. Like, I didn't come in your office every single time I had a big win or like someone told me no. Like I just went with it and just did my work. And I hoped that the numbers spoke for itself, but a lot of times you do have to share. And I talked about this more from a management perspective, but even as you're looking to build your brand as a salesperson and individual contributor, like you do have to get out of your comfort zone sometimes, and not everyone's going to be looking at all the numbers and diving into the reports and looking at the sales board. So you do have to find your way and comfort in telling your story and telling the accomplishments you have, because that's going to lead to opportunities for promotion and advancement. And again, never want someone to play the game, but you do need to tell the things that you're doing well, because sometimes that could get unnoticed. So if you're a manager managing an introvert, here's what we need from a manager on a sports sales team. Like I said, we're gonna be very reflective, observing. Like in a team setting, we're probably not gonna be the first one to raise our hand and speak up. So you need to call on us directly. You need to be the one who's going to be like, "Hey, Andre, what do you think about this?" I probably have a thought, probably have an opinion, but I'm really like trying to listen, and I need to be called out to speak and share that. Or I may go through the whole meeting, have all these ideas and thoughts, but never say anything, and just kind of go back to my desk and go on with my work. And you thought maybe, oh, Andre didn't speak up, so either he's afraid or he's disengaged or whatever. Like we have thoughts, we don't always speak up, so call on us. Recognition in one-on-one settings. I did mine personally. So again, like these are my own experiences. Everyone's going to be a little different. I didn't mind getting recognized publicly. If anything, I kind of like that. But some, they're terrified for it. Like especially like in sales meetings, you want to get everyone up and do clap around the staff and put everyone in front, or put the person who's done well in front of the whole staff and get them to speak up. Like I've seen people turn red and just shut down from that, and actually that leads to them being more disengaged than other ways. So like recognizing the one-on-one, or just asking like, hey, I know with your personality type, a lot of people I've seen, they prefer one-to-one recognition, just vocal recognition or an email, or pulling you aside and giving you a gift card, something like that. What do you prefer? Because maybe they don't want to be on all the TV screens in the office, or get brought up to the front of the sales floor and recognized in front of their whole peers. Sometimes you have to do it; it's part of building the culture, and they just have to suck it up. But being aware of that and those situations and how they best like appreciation and recognition. Um, Give us stretch projects, but debrief with us afterwards. So give us things that are going to stretch us, put us out of our comfort zone, but don't just leave us. Like come back and like let's talk through that. And where do we grow? What do we learn? What can we apply next time? Like that reflection is big for us, and getting to vocalize that and talk it out, because a lot of times we'll just stay in our head, but the more we could talk through it, that's going to be big for us. Because we kind of just do our work, like I talked about earlier, it's very easy to ignore us. And I've done that with introverts on my staff. I'm like, oh, I don't have to worry about them. They're always working. They don't cause me any trouble. They don't cause me any stress. But you got to check in, because we could be having a bad day and we're not going to say it. Where the person that's loud and out there having a bad day, they're going to tell every single person, like, guess what happened to me? Guess what happened on this call? And woe is me. Like, that person to call in your office and talk to, because they're just wearing it on their sleeves. Because we don't show as much emotion, you got to check in and make sure that things are good, and maybe ask us a couple times, hey, how are you doing? Like, oh, I'm fine. No, no, no. How are you really doing? Like, you got to dig deeper and get us to speak up and share some of those things. And then from like a mentorship or a growth standpoint, pair us with mentors that have a different personality than us. I shared this last time in the last video about, as a manager, as a leader, working for extroverted leaders above me. And at times I was uncomfortable, but that's what got the most out of me. And finding that balance between our personalities, I could level them out, they could pull more out of me. Pairing us up with people that are different, that can get us out of our comfort zone in certain situations, or seeing what it looks like. And like, all right, I may not do it exactly like that, but there's a different level that I could take it up to. So those are things that we need from managers as introverts, that can help us just get the most out of ourselves. So things to avoid. So kind of like the flip side of what we need, comparing us to other extroverts of what good looks like. So if you're going to critique, and you should never really compare in general. Like, you shouldn't compare your kids, you shouldn't compare reps and things like that. But if you're going to compare, it should be more fact based. Not, hey, Tommy's having success because he just goes for it. He's outgoing and he's courageous and this, that, and the other. Like, that could definitely offend, because we're like, we'll look at Tommy and be like, I'm not Tommy. Like, I'm never going to be like Tommy. I don't even want to try and sound like Tommy. So and Tommy's just fake. I never worked with a Tommy, so I'm just coming up with the name. But if you're gonna compare on more fact-based metrics. Hey, your average calls are 15 less than the other person, or your close rate is 10% lower than the others on the staff. Like, let's talk through that. Like, those are constructive ways, fact-based, that we can relate to. That's gonna make sense, versus personality. And I think it's kind of lazy at times too, as a leader, to just default to like personalities as the reason that people are having success. Like, there's a lot more to it than someone's outgoing or they're energetic when they talk to someone on the phone. I touched on this before, but assuming that being quiet means that we're disengaged, like, it could be the furthest thing from it. I think there's ways that you can check in on their level of engagement in one-to-one settings. What's connecting with them, what's resonating with them, having those conversations. You'll know if they're locked in, or if their head's in a different place, or head somewhere in the clouds. But avoid pushing high volume as like the metric if it's not necessary. Like, there's some roles where it's just a numbers game. It's got to be transactional, and you just got to suck it up and do it. But if there's more strategic ways or different ways that they can get to the end result of getting more meetings booked, maybe we like to do more emails, or instead of face to face, maybe do more virtual meetings. Whatever it may be, as long as like the metrics are there and the numbers are there to back it up, like finding ways that you don't have to necessarily change the rules, but how do you best support them in the style that they sell? that's just something that I've noticed the best leaders do anyways. It's like understanding someone's strengths and like really leaning into that to make sure that they have the most success that they can. Um, and then again, just public spotlight is the default. Like avoid that because that's not necessarily always going to be the case. Talk to them about it, see what's going to make the most sense for them. So as it relates to sports, I think we could thrive in all types of roles. So there isn't a one size fits all, but just based on the personality type and the style, consider them in more retention type roles where someone has done the work to go out and go get somebody, did the uncomfortable work to find someone who wasn't on board and didn't have a relationship with us and brought them in. Now we could take that relationship and really dive deeper into that, understand why that person bought and how do we leverage that and tap into that, get referrals, use that relationship that we're really good at and the listening to find ways to grow and cultivate that. That could be like a retention role, group sales, that's a big piece, corporate sales, corporate partnerships. Corporate partnerships, you usually see, the loud, outgoing type person, but when it comes to like the strategic parts of like putting together a long-term deal and the analytics behind it and like, what's the strategy on how this is going to be a successful partnership, that's somebody that, is going to have to be thoughtful. It doesn't always have to be an introvert, but those are skills that we have naturally that could lead to building trust and deeper connections with some of the clients. So I talked a little bit about stretching us and challenging us because at the end of the day, you don't want to make it a soft environment where this person's like, well, this is just who they are and I'm going to keep it comfortable. I'm really big in, a growth mindset and that you can develop and grow your skills. And that was one of the favorite books I read one of my time in Houston when I was a leader. We did book clubs and I started listening to the book. I don't have as much time to read as I used to, but listening to the book Mindsets again, and it talks about, being growth minded. So yeah, you can challenge, you can push, you can develop skills. So ways to do that, like you don't have to change the rules, like I said, but change the level of support and how you support and lead that person. Invite them to take on leadership. I always wanted to get into leadership and do, be active and involved in leadership, but I don't know, I just felt weird. I felt uncomfortable like putting myself out there, like, almost like, branding myself as like, hey, here's what I've done and like politicking for opportunities, but others felt comfortable doing that. They felt natural doing that. So, you know, pushing someone to do that on their own, but if you recognize that maybe they're a little hesitant, but they have the skills, like invite them into leadership. If someone invites me, then yeah, like I'm jumping all into that. So just being aware of that and thinking about that as a leader when you're managing someone like that. Give us time to prep. Again, that's not always going to be the opportunity within sales, but if there is a project that we're working on, like lay out clearly what the rules are, what the guidelines are, what you expect. Give us time to prep for that and come prepared with, what we come for the strategy and notes and things like that. We're not going to do a lot of things on the fly. Like we like to be prepared and ready for the type of questions we're going to get and the answers we have to it. So in those type of situations where it is okay to allow time to give us a lot of time to prep and build out a strategy and a game plan for how we're going to attack certain situations. And then if there's other introverts that you've managed or, do your research. Find people who've been successful with those type of personalities and show them like, hey, here's other people that are similar to you. It's not a deficiency, but finding other people that fit that same type of mold and have had success and use that as models for how they can continue to move up and thrive. Because at times we'll feel like maybe there isn't a spot for us or maybe there isn't an opportunity to grow. So those are things I would say from, how do we challenge and how do you support that person is finding other type of examples like that. So, to wrap up, if you're an introvert, share that because I think that's something that could really relate and resonate. And there's a bond you could build with that person. At times I've rubbed, we had a lot of rub and friction of other introverts that I manage. And I think it's probably just too much similar personalities, but there were a lot of things that we could connect on or, I could manage a little different because I knew, what was going on in their head a little bit. And, I could pull them aside and have a more honest, genuine conversation because I just knew the personality type. Don't try and change us. Don't try and make us like everyone else or what you think a good salesperson should look like. I've talked about that a lot, and I think that's a big flaw. I did that at times because I thought this is what it's supposed to look like, even though it wasn't me as a seller. And I see a lot of leaders, especially younger leaders, do that. Just they don't have the repetitions to see that, different types of people can thrive and have success. Don't coddle, but create a supportive environment. And then, yeah, have them, and this should be for everyone, but really have them learn about their strengths, learn about their opportunities for growth, their personalities. I shared this before as a manager, but I did the same exercise as a rep where we took a personality assessment, and everyone on the floor, everyone on my team, we did it, and it was really good because it really opened our eyes to who we are, what like we were a bunch of 20 something year olds that thought we knew everything, and this was like unbiased feedback of like, here's where you need to grow up and get better as a professional. But for me, again, it was back to that tortoise and the hare type thing. Like I was, methodical, very structured, very boring of like where my strengths are when you read it on paper. And so they nicknamed me Steady Eddie. And like they would do it as a joke, but like internally, like that upset me because, and not because like they were like hurting my feelings. It was my own insecurities coming out of sharing of I didn't feel like I was as talented as other people, all because of just the way that I operated. And so that just added more fuel to the fire to me to feel that way. So over time, I realized that that's the strength. Those are things that everyone can see no matter what their type of personality is. So definitely want to share that. Like, don't be discouraged if you have an assessment like that or you get feedback like that. That is clearly pointing out like what you do well, what you can improve upon, but it doesn't write the story of like how much success you're going to have, because all type of personalities can succeed. So as always, I appreciate the feedback through this. I've gotten a lot of good feedback through these conversations and through these videos of things that resonate with people, and people sharing some of their stories as introverts, which has been really cool to go through. To wrap up, I may do a couple more videos, but definitely one more where I'll talk about building that mix of a team where you have extroverts, introverts. How do they work together? How do you do that and mesh together to build a good culture? So appreciate as always you tuning in. I'll be back next week with another video. Thanks.